Last year, for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary, we got 3 televised specials, well 4 if you count the Church on Ruby Road. However, Big Finish were getting busy with 7 episodes of this epic Once and Future series, where the Doctor in the Time War was hit by a degeneration weapon, which caused him to change incarnations, and then he goes across time and space trying to find a way to cure him of his ailment and figure out where the degeneration weapon was manufactured, meeting friends and family and villains along the way, including the Daleks and Davros and the Doctor's daughter and the Curator and Harry Sullivan and Jackie Tyler and Missy, the Paternoster gang, Susan, and even the Unbound Doctor with a multi-Doctor story featuring Christopher Eccleston. And then the story ended, supposedly, with The Union, which had the 8th and the 4th Doctor and Susan and River Song. However, we'd known for months that there would actually be an 8th instalment that would be coming out in late 2024, and we knew no details about it for several months, even after Once and Future supposedly ended. But then we got the incredibly exciting announcement that Once and Future Coda, the final act, written by Tim Foley, would be a multi-Doctor story to cap off Once and Future, featuring the Fugitive Doctor and the War Doctor, which makes this Joe Martin's official Big Finish audio debut. And it kind of makes sense as well thematically to have these offshoot renegade doctors, not supposedly like teaming up, but actually fighting against each other. So the plot here is that after the events of the Union, the War Doctor leaves the titular Union and Susan and River Song behind after discovering what happened in terms of the degeneration weapon, and is immediately attacked by another TARDIS. And they don't know who each other are. The Fugitive Doctor does not know that the Doctor is in the other TARDIS, and the War Doctor does not know that another incarnation is on the other TARDIS as well. The Fugitive Doctor has been hired by some unseemly characters, possibly Division, in order to try and bring this war criminal, this deplorable meddler throughout time and space, try and bring him to justice. So the Fugitive is trying to track the War Doctor down. The War Doctor is trying to figure out just who on earth is trying to chase him across time and space. The Fugitive, however, stumbles across Bernice Summerfield, played by Lisa Bowerman, and Bernice is quite confused because there's this person who is definitely the Doctor, arrived here in a blue box and everything, but does not act like the Doctor, carries weapons, has got an armory inside of the TARDIS, and kind of holds themselves to a very different moral standard than the Doctor. However, the War Doctor manages to get in touch with the Fugitive in order to set up their final meeting. Let's play a quick clip from Once and Future Coda, the final act.
What's happening?
Oh, great. Someone to stand around and ask me questions. That's really what I'm after.
Is it him?
I'm trying to reach back, ground his TARDIS remotely, but a message is coming through.
So you just won't leave me alone?
Afraid not.
Then come and get me. On the planet Coda. 3 hours from now.
Did you recognize him?
Not from the voice.
What about his mugshot? I pulled a visual from the audio channel.
You can do that? No, don't know him. But he looks terribly sad.
3 hours from now. Why 3 hours?
Maybe he needs time to prepare.
Maybe he does. Maybe he needs
an army. That's what she's planning, isn't it? She's going to assemble one to take us
by surprise! All right then. 2 can play at that game, can't we, Lenny?
Benny.
So, here we go!
It's a really cool pairing, honestly. The Fugitive and the War Doctor, and for reasons that are spoilerific, they won't really know who the other one is. It's also an interesting conceit as well that possibly Division are involved and have hired or have tasked the Fugitive Doctor in order to track down this war criminal because they're ruining the Time War and making things very, very complicated for the Time Lords. That's a really interesting starting point. And then the story itself goes into these really interesting divergent strands where you've got the War Doctor trying to assemble an army, as you heard in that clip, by speaking to Queen Elizabeth I, and you also have the Fugitive meeting up with Bernie Summerfield, and then they bring on the Vord, who you may remember from the 1960s story The Keys of Marinus, to assemble another army. And there's also some weird background details that are making these two doctors act uncharacteristically impulsive, making very strange decisions. And it all culminates in this massive conflict on the planet Coda, where you've got this massive galleon in the sky, and you've got Elizabethan soldiers fighting Vord soldiers. And while the Vord have got the technology, the Elizabethan army have got all of the numbers. Bernie Summerfield is there in the middle, who is somebody who does not recognize the War Doctor, doesn't know the fugitive, so she's actually a really interesting companion to throw into the center of this thing as well. You've also got Chase Masterson playing Vienna Salvatore, but an alternate version of Vienna Salvatore as well, in a pretty fun cameo in the first act of the story, who has been liaising with both doctors to try and figure out who will pay the bigger bounty on the other one, which is a nice little fun dynamic. There's a few fun doctory flourishes there as well. The fugitive doctor's TARDIS literally rams into the War Doctor one, and in order to counter that, the War Doctor just gives her a ram, as in like a sheep. So the fugitive has just got a sheep for the first act of the story. There's some fun stuff there that I really did appreciate. Does she recognise the Vord? Yes, actually. I didn't spot that. That might technically be a bit of a plot hole. I don't know. But I think the idea is that the fugitive doctor loses her memories after this incarnation and then becomes the first doctor, and then it's basically a new regeneration cycle, a new life as far as they're concerned. So I think that kind of makes sense there. What also makes sense, and why I think Bernie Summerfield is a particularly good choice here, is because she has her own Big Finish adventures, so she knows about doctors from other universes. She has had multiple box sets with David Warner's Unbound Doctor, who we met in Time Lord Immemorial in the Once and Future chapter 6 with the Ninth Doctor. So that all checks out. I think it's interesting just how this story kind of really leans into the main premise of the fugitive and the War Doctor, these two offshoot rogue incarnations fighting each other. And then the villain of the story, the big beast they have to fight at the end, as you can see from the cover here, is an Ouroboros dragon snake thing, which is literally a beast that eats its own tail. You know, Tim Foley knows writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. There's very little actual subtext. It's all, this is what we're feeling, these are the themes of the story, this is what we're trying to convey. I kind of appreciate that really hard directness. But the real stars of the show here, I think, are Joe Martin and Jonathan Carley. They don't have much interplay with each other. A lot of their scenes are of them just missing each other, just skipping out on each other, and like, so they don't actually have that many face-to-face confrontations until the third act. But when they do come together, I wouldn't say they have chemistry, because these two are like fighting each other. They're on the opposing sides of this conflict and they don't know who the other one is for the longest time. But they have fun banter and dynamic with each other. I think that they maybe try and lean into the fugitive doctor is not the doctor properly, like, angle. Like, you explicitly have Bernie Summerfield saying, like, the doctor has, like, is the same but different every time, but they always have this moral code and you don't follow that. And it's like, we know this? I think we can kind of figure this out. You don't need to, like, say it this explicitly, you know. The subtext is for cowards, of course. But I did enjoy Once and Future Coda, the final act. There's not much to it in terms of plot and story. It's all like some fan service and action beats and making sure that this encounter between the fugitive and the War Doctor works in terms of the broader canon of the Whoniverse. And it does actually pull that off in very effective ways. I did enjoy Coda, the final act. I'm not really wanting to revisit it anytime soon. I think it's, you know, it's a fun coda. It's a fun epilogue to this epic 8-part degeneration story across time and space that kind of ends as it went on for the past year. But, you know, it was good that the cast was strong. I like Jonathan Carley and Joe Martin a lot. It was really fun as well to hear Joe Martin in the interviews afterwards. I'll play a quick clip here because there's some really good interviews at the end of this, and Joe Martin just seems like she's having so much fun.
My name's Jonathan Carley, and I play the early War Doctor.
I'm Joe Martin, playing the fugitive doctor.
And I'm Lisa Bowerman, playing Professor Bernie Summerfield.
I'm the fugitive doctor. I mean, I'm the doctor. What else do you want to know? What can I tell you, kid, that you don't know? I got 2 hearts. Gallifrey, I can drop in a lot of words here.
That's fun. Utopic777 asks, can you listen to it standalone? You know what? You can. the very start of the story, the War Doctor's like, "Oh, goodbye, Susan. You know, the degeneration was some nasty business," and then it just kind of goes into its own thing. You can listen to this on its own. This does work as a purely standalone story once you pass the 10-second mark, which I actually think works in its credit, because I know a lot of people are pretty hyped and excited for Jo Martin to be making her Big Finish debut here, so rather than bog this story down in the previous 7 chapters from a year ago for Once and Future, like, I think it was a smart play. It's an action-packed, fun, fan-servicey story that does pick up, you know, some of the themes and ideas from Once and Future, but does work distinctly standalone. If you are going to listen to anything in Once and Future, it would be this, and also Martian Invasion of Planetoid 50, which is a very strong standalone chapter with the 10th Doctor, Missy, and the Paternoster Gang. This is still, I think, like the head and shoulders standout of the Once and Future saga, but Coda's not far off with like maybe the 2nd or the 3rd place medal. Yeah, this was fun. I just don't think there's an awful lot to it, and I think that there's basically no subtext here. All of the text is left on the table, which is kind of uncharacteristic for Tim Foley. I mean, the guy's like a Giga Chad writer who has produced some of my favourite Big Finish from the past couple of years, but there's a certain level of bluntness here, which part of me appreciates. You know, it's a different vibe, but I'm here for it. Tim Foley did well here, and you know, it culminates in a big Lord of the Rings epic battle with a galleon in the sky, Bernie Summerfield trying to stop this massive conflict from breaking out. There's a goat involved. There's a big blob creature that influences people's minds. You know, fun stuff. Stocky Who. You know, it's a fun final act.